because it's time for this.
Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you, happy birthday everybody, happy birthday to you.
Today is the birthday of Sandra Ann Goodrich, who was born on this day on the 26th of February in 1947. Slip your shoes and socks off. How old is she today? 75. Too slow. Yes, she is turning 75. We knew her better as Sandy Shaw, which is a great name when you think about it.
It is. It is a perfect name.
She was an English singer, one of the most successful British female singers in the 1960s. She had 3 UK number one singles with There's Always Something There to Remind Me. I beg your pardon, open brackets, there's, close brackets, always something there to remind me, from 1964. Long Live Love, not the one that Olivia Newton-John had, which was Long, Long Live Love, and Puppet on a String. In 1967, with the latter, she became the first British entry to win the Eurovision Song Contest. She went back to the UK Top 40 in 1984 for the first time in 15 years. So Sandy Shaw's having a birthday today. She was known as the Barefoot Singer. She used to perform all the time in bare feet.
Wow, there you go.
So that was her little gimmick, along with people like Petula Clark and Dusty Springfield, when they were the queens of the music industry. Now, there are some other folk having birthdays, and in fact, this is not a good time of the year because 6 of the people having birthdays we're going to list today are no longer with us. See how you go with telling me who these people are, Sienna. Here's your test. Who was Levi Strauss?
No idea.
Wow. That's extraordinary. If you look at the backside of lots of people, you will find Levi's name on the back of them because he's the man who created Levi jeans.
Oh, there you go.
And if you look at the label on the back of the jeans, it actually says Levi Strauss & Co. He would have been turning 193 years of age.
Wow.
All right. There's a bit of a hint in this bloke's name. John Harvey Kellogg.
I'm going to guess he has something to do with breakfast cereals.
He was the man who invented the cornflake. He would be turning 170.
Wow.
Again, no longer with us. Next one, I don't think you'll know. Tony Randall. He was an actor who played the part of Felix in the TV show The Odd Couple and was also in a lot of films and stuff. He would have been turning 102. Fats Domino.
Yes.
Who was he?
I know this one. He is a singer-songwriter, wasn't he?
He was from the 1950s and 60s. You know where he found his thrill?
No.
On Blueberry Hill. On Blueberry Hill, that's where I found you. One who is still with us at the age of 91, Josephine Tewson. Now, most people won't know that name, but if I say to you the television show Keeping Up Appearances with Hyacinth Bouquet, she had a poor lady who lived next door to her called Liz. And every episode was basically based around the fact that Liz kept spilling her coffee. She was Liz all those years ago. If you don't know this one, I'm going to be very disappointed. Johnny Cash.
Look, I didn't grow up under a rock. That's all right.
He would have been turning 90 today, the great man, the man in black. Peter Brock.
No, another
Folks,
one.
welcome to the generation gap. Peter Brock, of course, the king of the mountain, the motor racing star. He passed away, I guess it's got to be 20 years ago now. He was in a rally car accident. He would have been turning 77 today. Simon Crean, I'm not even going to ask. No, he was, I think, the 14th Minister for the Arts in the federal government. His father was also a politician, but Simon Crean is turning 73. And Michael Bolton.
Look, I've seen him in plenty of TV ads, that's for sure.
No, that's a different Michael Bolton. This one, he was a singer. And How Could We Be Lovers If We Can't Be Friends was his big hit out of the 1990s. I tell you what, Rob, in case you're driving up there and thinking to yourself, oh, gee, I'm out of a job, I reckon you've still got the birthday artist segment covered. That's where I think we'll just bring you into the birthday segment from now on.
Elise, what's been happening?
Oh, you two are too flattering to me. Good morning. How are you both?
All the better for speaking to you, as we do every second Saturday morning here on normally the Two Blokes Chatting, but today Two Folks Chatting radio program.
That's good. That's good. So far, so good?
Yeah, I think so, except that I pressed the wrong button at the start, but that's okay.
Oh, no. That's okay. We forgive you.
Thank you very much. What's going on?
We've got some third round BFRW action this week, and might I say, covering the Essendon Bulldogs game 2 weeks ago. The Essendon team are looking an absolute real deal. They got very close last year. I think they can take the big one this year, providing everything goes to plan and there's no interruptions with the schedule due to COVID. They look absolutely slick as a unit, and they're just insane. And insanely good incredibly disciplined and just absolute. And even when they weren't creating, even some of the attacks up forwards that they weren't necessarily going to plan, they always had that option B. Always had option B going. Always had numbers, forward of the footy, and just were making the most of those opportunities. And I mean, granted, the Bulldogs side were a little bit depleted that game, but the Essendon team did not let up whatsoever. And what else have we got? We've got round 8 of the AFLW this week, so we're getting closer to talking about finals. I'm glad to say that my Richmond team recorded their second win of the season last week against West Coast. They had a really good start, and it was in that third quarter, West Coast kind of came fighting back a little bit, and kind of made the game a little bit interesting. But it was good that the Tigers were able to get the win. To get the win, especially travelling over to WA the same day, fly out in the same day. I think they did really well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think those who are listening, unless they're first-time listeners, would recognise that I support a team that is located in I won't name which team, but it's based in Brisbane. And just watching our girls the other day, that's 3 games in 10 days. They're playing another one over the weekend, I think Sunday, which will be 4 games in 14 days. I mean, we did it during COVID for the men's a couple of years ago when it was that, or we didn't have a season. But demanding women who are part-time athletes flying all over the countryside to play a game of footy with only 3 days break, it's got to be starting to take some toll, you would have thought.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's only round 8 at the moment, and I guess I know it's a terrible thing to say, but I guess, for some of the teams that might not be in finals contention, there might be that little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, thinking, well, it's only another couple of weeks and the season's over. I have a feeling they won't be feeling like that, but I guess for some that are finding it incredibly challenging, especially where they've got families that they're leaving behind to play footy, you can tend to empathise and understand, that sort of mindset. And yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, we've had this discussion before where, we would like our female Aussie rules athletes to be full-time professionals, but we're just not at that. We're just not at that stage yet. I think we're getting there, but we're just not at that stage yet. And I think we're sort of toing and froing at this stage and still figuring a lot of things out. And there's a lot of investment from AFL House about this, and really sort of working to make that happen. Yeah, it is very interesting how those still the women's competitions are still being affected by a lot of the COVID restrictions. I hazard a guess that we won't be having this conversation, informally about the men's competition when it starts, when it actually, kicks off in about 3 weeks' time. I have a feeling that'll go very smooth sailing, but, I very much commend and applaud the efforts of all the players and the clubs and the administrative staff, and everyone at AFL House working to get the competition going, because we're seeing some great quality matches, even in these real trying times. We're still seeing some great footy, and it just goes to show that, regardless of the adversity that we find ourselves in, the players still want to play and the coaches still want to coach, and we still want to, have a really good competition. So it's still very encouraging to see even these tough times.
No, I thought Sienna was going to ask you a question. It's all right. I think the thing that there was, I can't remember who it was. It was one of the players from one of the Melbourne-based sides who had to fly interstate. Oh, wacko! Fancy that, having to play interstate. But the concern that they had was that the game had originally been planned for Friday, and it was moved to Sunday, I think it was. And the player concerned works, and some of these women's footballers are not just doing, retail, and I mean that in the nicest possible way, where they can find someone to cover the shift. Some of them are doctors. Some of them are in the army. Some of them are working in organisations where getting time off, they're not casual employees. They're taking annual leave to play footy, and suddenly that Friday is no longer required. But by the way, can you go and play football in Perth on Sunday afternoon and then front up for work on Monday morning? Yeah,
and I know we've spoken about this before. It's very easy for male players to do that because obviously they're full-time professionals, and they can just sort of drop things at the drop of the hat, and just their schedules are very flexible in that sense. But yeah, as you said, a lot of the players in the AFLW competition, some of them are, they're paramedics. They're, members of the police force, they're teachers, they're nurses, they're in, as you said, and a lot of them are shift workers. They're not, 9 to 5 sitting in an office, doing sedentary stuff where, they have that opportunity to take annual leave and also take it at a really, like at really short notice as well. You know, some companies, you know, want you to give them a certain amount of notice before you take any kind of time off, because obviously they have to plan for, you know, rostering and, you know, to cover whoever's on leave. So, yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, also shout out to the employers of the players that are flexible to, you know, say, oh, you know, my, you know, fixture changed, I don't need that day off anymore, or we're playing on a Monday night now in Adelaide, it's going to be fly in, fly out. I have to have Monday off, and can we do this? And so, you know, they're also showing their flexibility as well, you know, for their staff, that, you know, that play footy as well. So certainly a really, really challenging time. But, you know, I think the general attitude is they don't just want to make do anymore. You know, I feel like, you know, they still have that sense of, you know, we're just doing what we can to get the competition going, but it's not ideal. And it does have that impact more so than the male players. And I think they just want to be heard, in the sense of not just heard for the sake of, oh, we hear you and do nothing about it. You know, and I think that's why, you know, whenever there is, you know, there will be, you know, if there is, and if and when there will, you know, there will be a collective bargaining agreement, you know, those kind of provisions will be scrutinised in a lot more detail, because the players themselves will have experienced those situations firsthand. And it may look a heck of a lot different to what the men's enterprise bargaining agreement looks like. You know, between the AFL and the AFL Players Association, you know, that's, you know, it'll look completely different, but I think we have to have it tailored for those needs, because they're the challenges that our female players face in order to keep the competition going, and in order to keep it sustainable and to keep it nationwide. You know, we don't really want to see, you know, clubs struggling to field players, and, you know, we're getting a couple of new teams in the next season. You know, Sydney are coming on board, Hawthorn will be coming on board. So we want to make sure that whatever model we have right now is sustainable for the future, so that we can sustain those teams and really make it that 18-team comp, and to make it sustainable, and to make sure that the players that are giving up their time to train and play and commit to gym sessions, commit to team meetings outside of work time and outside of their footy playing time, to keep them engaged in the game. And I know they will. I have no doubt about that. But it's just logistically making it work so that they're happy in doing what they're doing, and that they also keep loving playing the game of Aussie rules footy, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about.
Yeah, and I think that's just a brilliant point there, Elise. Like, there are so many people putting in and trying to arrange these games and this competition for these girls, and not only that, they've had that curveball thrown at them from COVID and isolation, and having all those extra rules thrown in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all right for someone like myself. You know, I work 9 to 5 in a sedentary office job. You know, so it's okay for me. But, you know, like I was saying before, you know, some of the players, you know, they're shift workers, they're, you know, frontline workers. So, you know, and I know we've spoken about, Danny Verhagen from the Adelaide team, who didn't want to be vaccinated, and she was, you know, she is still an ICU nurse there in Adelaide. So, you know, it's not just, you know, they're working sedentary jobs and COVID's impacting their opportunity to play Aussie rules football. It's also the fact that COVID's affecting their jobs, but then it's also affecting their sort of ability to play footy as well. So it's not just sort of from a footy point of view that COVID's affecting them, it's also, you know, in their lives as well. And plus with everyone, where it had been rampant in the community, and obviously there was that spread and there's that concern, and et cetera. But, and it's also the volunteers from the clubs as well. You know, a lot of them are volunteers, a lot of them are paid employees by the club to make sure, you know, you have trainers and you have physios and you have water people, support staff. You know, a lot of the support staff are volunteers, so yeah, they might get around and might have their, flights paid for if they're interstate games. But a lot of them don't get paid, and they do that, you know, they do what they do and volunteer their time to the club because they love the game and they love the club and they want to do what they can to help. And that's also another thing to think about as well. But it's just a really wonderful effort from everyone involved to, you know, keep the competition going. And as much as we like to, you know, be a little bit negative and, you know, have a bit of an opinion about certain things, the fact that we've still got a competition going, you know, in the dead of heat of summer, we're still, you know, COVID, you know, concerns and COVID rampant in the community at the moment. It seems like it's calming down a little bit, but, you know, three or 4 weeks ago it was still quite a big concern. So, you know, just shout out to everyone, you know, at AFL House and, you know, anyone who's involved in the AFLW, any of the clubs, any of the teams, any of the support staff, the players, the families, the media that do it for free as well. You know, some of the media obviously, you know, aren't doing it for free, but, you know, some people are covering the games because they love to cover the games, because they want to do it and they love the game so much. So, big round of applause to everyone involved. It's been tough, but I think we know it's all worth it at the end of the day.
A beautiful segue to our friends at Women's Australian Rules Football Radio, WARF Radio, WARFradio.com. Pete and the team, of which we have one member in this studio and another member on the telephone. Great to see the WARF Radio team up and about again, broadcasting all of the VFLW games, as many as they can, because it's, again, all very voluntary. And at the same time, having some of their voice stuff picked up and put against the video streams that the VFL have decided to have for the VFLW games this year.
Absolutely. We had a bit of a struggle at the hangar a couple of weeks ago, figuring it all out. But as the true champion that Peter Holden is, got it all sorted out and figured out. So it's just one of those things where, they're trying to get a better coverage, and, obviously, having the video streams now on streaming to YouTube is really great, and it's, for people that can't come to the games and, still want to watch a highlights reel. I think it's one of those things that people don't quite appreciate and understand how much work goes into it until you're involved. Like, I'm only involved in a very, very minor part of the process. But, for someone like, Peter, who's, it's basically his baby, essentially, there's a lot of work and effort and time that goes into making sure that things run smoothly and to make sure that, he's delivering a quality product for his listeners. So, as I said, it's one of those where, you don't fully appreciate the amount of work that goes into something until you're a part of it. But the reason why, it does take a lot of time is because we want to make sure that we're doing it right, we're doing it well, because it's what people want and it's what people deserve as well. So we want to bring the best coverage we can, and we hope that anyone that's, watching the VFLW streams or, listening to our commentary and our chatter, enjoys it, because that's why we do it. We love the game, and we love bringing people the game that they love.
Well, Elise, we'll just give one more plug for that before we let you go. WARF Radio, that's WARF Radio, Women's Australian Rules Football Radio.com. 2 or 3 games every week, broadcast live on the website, and also being picked up by the VFL as well on the VFLW streams. Thanks for joining us. We will talk to you next fortnight, 2 weeks from now. How does that sound?
Sounds good to me. Thanks for having me. Have a good one.
Thank you, Elise. Elise Zotzis there, our women's sport presenter. 23 and a half minutes past 9 o'clock. Now, Sienna, you're going to have a crack at some of that radio stuff as well.
Oh, goodness. The pressure's on.
No, as in the WARF radio stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, so some boundary riding potentially. So, yeah, have a listen. It's good fun. 24 minutes past 9 o'clock. Don't forget, this is a shortened program. 10 o'clock, we're going off to the Diversitat Hub up in Nor Lane for an outside broadcast with Rob and David. I can see Alan and Robert in the next studio chomping at the bit, wanting to get on and do that. But in the meantime, we're going to hear from our sponsors. Now, Rob Cameron, I know you're listening out there, and Sienna has heard 2 songs, and I reckon she's onto the theme already. What do you reckon it is?
Look, I think there's a lot of something about today.
There is. There's always something there to remind me, and something so strong. See, Rob, after 2 songs, she's picked it. How good is that? 9:30 on a Saturday morning. We're halfway through this morning's program. Don't forget, after 10 o'clock, we're off to Nor Lane for an outside broadcast with Robert and David, I believe, are the first 2 microphone holders. Yes, it's time for the long run at 29 minutes to 10 o'clock. Sienna, you have got you've got the new ball in your hand. Off you go. Get off the long run. What do you got?
Look, the one thing that's been getting to me consistently this past week, for those who don't know, I work at a pool and gym, and there is nothing more frustrating than when people leave all of their weights out after their sets.
So for those of you who are listening, you've got no idea what she was just talking about. When in the gym, you're meant to take them back to the rack, are you? Is that the idea?
Yes, correct.
I don't come to your gym, isn't it? Is it possible that they're just too tired? They've done so much lifting, they can't lift them anymore.
Look, it is possible, but I'm feeling like if you can't lift your weight and put it back on the rack, you probably shouldn't be lifting it in the first place.
Time to pull their weight, is that what you're saying?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, excellent. Oh, well, good. Yeah, so there you go. You've been told, you folk who go to Sienna's gym, she's going to start coming around, picking them up and dropping them on your foot. I've got a couple, and it's the ongoing lack of ability to know anything about the great game of Australian rules football that is demonstrated by some journalists, and we are going to speak to one in 5 or 10 minutes who is outside of this. I'm pretty sure he's good at this. There's an article during the week about my Brisbane Lions. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but talking about various players and where they might play. Fagan believes Bailey and Rayner, amongst others, are ready to step up to the plate. The 60-year-old also hinted as to where Neil might be running around on the pitch next season.
Wow, I thought it was football, not cricket.
Yeah, or Australian rules football, not soccer.
Yeah.
Or hockey. Yeah. Likewise, this morning I noticed in the Herald Sun, I think it was, so Barnsley's mates up the road, they were talking about the fact that the footballers are currently going through a whole stack of trial games.
Yeah.
No, they're pracky games. They're practice games. They're not trial games at all.
Yeah. No, the practice matches.
Yeah. And when did the expression head coach start to dribble in?
Probably when they started to get too much in your head.
May well be, yeah, because it used to be coach, assistant coach, and then, line coaches and so forth. But suddenly we now have head coaches. The day they start calling them managers will be the day that I don't get off the long run. I'll go down to Colac and I'll run in from there.
Now that's a sight to see.
Yeah, indeed. Well, when I say run, So, so get it right with you guys. It's not, and people they're playing for the jersey. No, they're not.
No.
They play for the jumper.
Yep.
Or they play for the Guernsey. They do not play for a jersey. You get a jersey in rugby. You don't get a jersey in Australian rules football.
No.
That's all I have to say on the matter today. We are going to have another sponsorship announcement, and then we're going to have another song, and then we are going to come back and we are going to talk Barnsley and Geelong Advertiser Sport. What do you say?
Oh, I look forward to it.
It is 26 minutes to 10 o'clock, 94.7 The Pulse. This is the Two Folks, Not Blokes Chatting Radio Show. And a song called Something. Sienna had stumbled over the theme early doors. Every song had the word something in it. What a good song.
That is a classic.
I had to rank the best Beatles songs ever,
Oh.
and that came in at number one in my mind. Time for this. We're running a few minutes early today because we are going to, just at the end, talk a little bit about what's going on after 10 o'clock. But at 20 minutes to 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning, good morning to you, Josh Barnes from the Geelong Advertiser.
Good morning, folks. How many songs are there from the Beatles and how long did it take you to rank them?
I think the answer to your first question is I can give you an exact number. It's lots. And it really was a case of going through it. It was an interesting exercise to do. I went through the albums and just songs off the albums that I thought were okay, and then had to make sure there were probably a handful of songs that didn't ever get onto an album that you need to include as well. And then I went through and identified A, B, C, D. The D's were just dropped out straight away. The A's went into the top 10, and the B's went into the pretty much sort of shuffled until I got it. And then sort of, how do you split the top three? I mean, the top three were I Am the Walrus at number 3, number 2 was Yesterday, and number 1 was Something. And the thing with that is it represents the three main songwriters. It was just really a really interesting exercise, but it took me a day or two.
Do you know how many A's you ended up with?
I think I ended up with about 15.
Yeah, okay.
So I had to rank the A's and then sort of work down into the B's. And I mean, I used to always tell my parents this, B's are very, very, very good result, particularly on my report.
The best classes. I've been reliably told by someone who would know, David Barnes is listening, that he reckons there's 213 songs.
That could be right. It depends on if you count some of the... There was a couple, Free as a Bird, I think was the song they brought out that they found on a tape, whether you count those ones, and album songs and stuff. That might be an exercise for me to do. Good morning, David. Great to have your company this morning. Well known to the aforementioned Josh. Now, Josh, we have no Rob Cameron this morning, but we do have a Sienna Mannix. So if you're thinking, gee, I tell you what, Rob's voice is sounding a little bit more dulcet this morning, you'll understand why.
Yes, how are you going, Sienna?
I'm good, thanks, Josh. And yourself?
Yeah, not too bad.
What's happening in the world of sport this morning?
Well, I guess we're all gearing up for the return. It's been an unusual return to pre-season football. We've had absolute local football chaos in the last sort of few days, with the AFL men finally getting back on field. I think Scott Sullivan was umpiring yesterday in the Collingwood game. Geelong's got a squad of 48 players named for today's match, which is more players than that on the AFL list. So how they've managed to end up with that, and they're going to filter them through 6 quarters. 17 VFL players. I think that is because the VFL doesn't have a practice match scheduled for at least another couple of weeks, so they're trying to get some minutes into the legs. But it's a good opportunity for some local players. But I don't know how you rotate 48 players through the bench. They're going to be sitting up in the stands.
Well, I think I'm right in saying yesterday Collingwood played Hawthorn down at Morwell, I'm going to say. It was down the Latrobe Valley, certainly somewhere. And I think they played 2 3-quarter games. So they played, which I thought was quite funny because clearly they wouldn't be quarters, they'd be thirds. But they played 3 quarters, then they stopped, and then they basically changed squads. So the first squads were pretty much their best teams, and then the second game was their sort of top-ups.
Yeah, I think that's the plan for Geelong at least. I'm not sure how Richmond's going to attack it. I think they had 11 VFL players on their list to play today. I think Geelong's going to be playing closer to their best side for the first half of the afternoon and then swapping them out. Andy Marr's old challenge had show the 5th quarter was ahead of its time. They're going into the 6th quarter.
That's right. Yeah, it's like the 19th hole, isn't it? Yeah. So, some poor sod has to play in both games or know they're alive tomorrow morning when they wake up. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, if Scott Selwood was manning the bench, I think, for the first half trying to be a coach, and then he was out there umpiring for the second half of the time. So a lot of people doing a lot of different jobs filling in. It is very local football there.
Well, I read somewhere where the World Cup of cricket, the Women's World Cup, they're apparently changed the rules to allow scorers, match officials to subfield.
Yeah, well, I heard that they were going to potentially reduce teams to 9 players if COVID gets in the way and they have to continue on. I guess that makes sense, I suppose, but I don't know what happens if we get down to losing batters. I haven't read into the fine print. Are they just going to end up with only 8 wickets to play with, or are they going to give people 2 shots, or does the scorer get the pads on and have a whack out there?
An interesting expression. I suppose it's no different to Merge Bollock fronting up to South Barwon and saying, sorry, someone's getting married at the club and we haven't got enough players. I guess it's the same concept.
Yeah, I suppose so, but it's a little bit higher brow, I suppose, than going to King Lloyd Reserve. But, it'll be interesting to see how they figure that out. Hopefully it doesn't get to that stage, but fielding 9 players, it is sort of really under 11 sort of stuff.
It is a bit, isn't it? I trust that you are out walking in the street and that's not some other kind of weird sound effect we've got going in the background with crossing the road.
No, that's right. I've got myself caught at the traffic lights at the wrong time here.
That's never good. So back to AFL and AFLW football, because that seems to be where the action is at the minute. There's been some players come through. Is it Jason Francis Horn, I always get his name around the wrong way, made his debut, and the chap from Adelaide, whose name I can't remember, he had a run yesterday. There seems like there's a few of the draftees getting out and having a run round.
Yep, the Raps are very, very high on Horn Francis, formerly Horny. Adopted, I think, his stepmother's last name as well. I think I'll be getting that wrong, but he's become a hyphenated player. Yeah, there's a lot of expectation and pressure on him early. It'll be interesting to see how he handles that, but he's got a lot of raps on him. Took a big fine mark for the Roos playing early, and they got absolutely pants by Melbourne. So I think there's going to be a lot of focus on him throughout this year, which might not be great for him. It depends how he handles it, but given the Kangaroos, I don't think they're going to be fighting many shots in terms of winning games. A lot of the attention is going to be on Horn Francis, and hopefully he can deliver, because that club probably needs a real superstar. They probably haven't really had a genuine superstar since Wayne Carey. Bruno High was an excellent player, but to have a really good, high-quality player there for hopefully 15 years, hopefully set them on the right track.
Because I think the game in question, North and Melbourne fronted up with pretty much a solid, not quite the premiership team. I think they had 16 players from the premiership team. They were always going to struggle, weren't they? But I guess the great thing about practice matches, and by the way, can you have a chat to your mate up the road at the Herald Sun and tell him that they're not called trial games? The great thing about pracky games is that if you win, you go, it looks really good for the season ahead. And if you lose, it doesn't matter. It's a practice match. Everyone's a winner, aren't they?
Yeah, well, that's the point of rotating your players out. If you're down by 10 goals and rotate your players out and lose by 15, you can tell it's just because we started playing the VFL guys and gave them a shot.
Yeah.
They might be better in a lot of cases.
Yeah, that could be awkward, couldn't it?
But yeah, it's a good chance, I suppose, to see the younger guys come through. It's a far cry from the old days of the Wizard Cup when we would play 4 or 5 serious practice matches and have a pre-season competition, and it was taken reasonably seriously. The teams wanted to win. These days, you really only get one elongated game that you only play half seriously, and then there's one official practice match coming up a week later, and then you're straight into the action. I think that's a good idea that they don't spend a lot of time playing pre-season matches and spend a lot of, petrol tickets, as the commentators call it. But it is interesting how it's flipped from being a serious month of lead-in footage, and now it's really just a kick and giggle.
Yeah, and I think I'm really curious to know what your thoughts are on this, Josh. Similarly, how Melbourne were out playing cricket over the week in leads of their warm-up.
What the Demons were having a hit before they ran on the field, were they?
Yeah, they've gone out and they've created a whole cricket match just for a bit of, I suppose, community within the group themselves. But it's actually quite entertaining to watch.
Yeah, well, that's a good idea, I think. Playing these other sports has become sort of part of the regiment of the games. You know, there's a lot of players who in the season play a little bit of indoors, I guess, change room cricket instead of backyard cricket, and get themselves ready. You see a lot of soccer played by cricket teams that put Will Bukowski in trouble. He touched himself kicking a volleyball into his own face a couple of weeks ago, so that didn't really work out, obviously, for him. But it is a great way to get warmed up, and I think they probably took that probably more seriously, the Demons. Than they
Well, it'd be bragging rights, wouldn't there?
Digging them in short. I'd be scared to face him coming off the long run.
Yeah, I think, to use an expression my grandmother used to use, it's all fun and games till someone loses an eye. I guess if someone's out playing cricket and steps on a ball a la Glenn McGrath, that rhymes, like ooh, Glenn McGrath, then suddenly it's not such a great idea and everyone, kicks the coach for doing it.
Yeah, as long as you clear the runway of ball, I always wanted to know who placed that ball there in the middle of the outfield on Edgbaston and really derailed things. It was great for the game of cricket, but not so great for us Aussie supporters.
Yeah, no, there was a bit of that. And Melbourne, everyone, according to the newspapers, Melbourne can't be beaten this year. Your thoughts?
Well, they've got to be favourites, I suppose, heading into the year. It's the same as every year, probably. The premiership favourites, the premiership winners deserve to probably start as favourites. I think we won't really learn a lot about Melbourne until deep in the season unless things go horribly wrong. They've had a bizarre off-season with all the speculation around their coach, but it hasn't really affected them on field so far. Unless they get a whole range of injuries, I don't think we'll really be watching them that closely. I think they'll probably trumpet a lot of teams, get tested by a few others, and you wake up and see where they sit in round 15. The biggest question for me, really, with Melbourne is whether they can be the first side ever to play the same premiership team again. No club has ever fielded the same lineup as they did winning a premiership ever again, and they're in a position to do it. They had no retirees. Everybody can fill in the head. That's what I'm most excited to see from Melbourne. Richmond got close last year. I think they were just short, so that's going to be really what I'm watching for the first 10 weeks. Otherwise, I think they'll be winning a lot of games and winning them quite comfortably.
And these are two players that apparently I'm the only person in the world who doesn't love them to death. But I noticed Clayton Oliver and Christian Petracchi yesterday during the game. One of them kicked a goal. They've run up to each other and done that stupid chest or stomach bump thing. Is that a little bit arrogant during the pre-season, do you reckon?
Oh, I don't mind. I'm happy for both to go and be able to be inventive. I really enjoyed the celebration of Bailey Smith last year in the semi-final league, put ice in his veins of emulating D'Angelo Russell in the NBA. I think bringing a little bit more of that into the game, I don't mind it. I don't think it's too rude on the opposition. You can celebrate your own goals how you like, really. A chest bump is probably not the safest way to do it, doing that, but I think the more power to it. It's probably one of the highlights of soccer is how they celebrate. I think there should be more trademark celebrations, the better, I think.
To be fair, it's the only thing that's interesting about soccer. And I've just had 3/4 of the listeners switch off, the Melbourne supporters and the soccer supporters. So given what you've seen so far, who's the smoky team? Who's the team that's going to sneak into the 8?
Well, it's hard when you're just trying to judge it off these games. I think Essendon really looks like they've performed well. They've got most of what they needed. They've got another small forward with Anthony McDonald, Tip and Woody, deciding, sort of working his way through some personal issues. Tex Wanganeen looks like he's got a bit of spunk on that forward line. So they did play finals last year, the Dons, and I think they will be right back in the snip. And finally, they can maybe win a final after 20 years in the wilderness. Maybe they can tick that off this year. But I think the top 8 will probably shape up pretty similar to the way it has. I don't think there'll be any huge rises from way down the ladder. I think those sides that were struggling last year will struggle again. We won't see Gold Coast rise up after the Max King injury. I can't see Hawthorn really doing anything of note. North Melbourne similar. So Carlton perhaps can sneak in there, but we've probably said that about Carlton for 10 years now. So I think it'll be a pretty similar setup at this stage.
Yeah, and is there any particular players that you're looking forward to seeing how they play out for the season?
I was excited by the work of Patrick Cripps on what was that, Thursday maybe, when He played against St Kilda. He's been maligned for the last 2 or 3 years, and he was really tracking to be possibly the best player in the competition only sort of 2 years ago. He's been hampered by injuries. Hopefully with a little bit more support with George Hewitt and Adam Cherry in that midfield alongside him, hopefully he can get back to his best, particularly with Sam Walsh out. If he can get back to being sort of that Brownlow threat, I think that's good for the game, because he really presents something a little bit different as a midfielder, as a really big body guy who doesn't run that well compared to others. He really gets in hard and he's an old-fashioned sort of on-ball, so hopefully he can get back to his best.
Yeah, because I think one of the observations that was made last year about him was with Sam Walsh becoming the dominant midfielder at Carlton, maybe it just affected Cripps's game a bit, where he didn't feel like he had to carry the entire team.
Yeah, I think it was definitely good for him, and I think he sort of bought into that as well, that he looked at things and thought, I'm the man here, I have to do everything, and it was almost like that for a couple of years, 2018-19, but Sam Walsh surpassed him last year and will be a better player than him, I think, the way he's projected, but as long as he has guys around him that he can sort of rely on, so he doesn't have to go and win the ball every single time, maybe he can play a little bit more forward with a bit more freedom and just relax a little bit more on the field, and that might give him a shot at being a better player.
And given that we have a high proportion of Geelong supporters listening to this program, who's the Geelong player that's going to step up that maybe people will be surprised by his improvement?
I'll be looking forward to seeing what we get out of Cooper Stevens today. He's been ravaged out of injuries for his first couple of years on the AFL list. He was a first-round draft pick. I think he's a really good sort of inside midfield prospect, a guy who can really push himself on the outside. He's as fit as anyone else in the system. So after a couple of years of biding his time, I think he should be aiming to play 15, 18 games and become a real solid midfielder. I think a guy who has snuck under the radar even when he was drafted, but has been really impressive coaches down there from what we've seen, is Cooper White from Grovey. He's a nice sort of silky left footer. He'll be playing today as well. I'll be interested to see how he goes. He can play half-back, he can play on the wing. I think he's a real sort of footballer's footballer. He knows his way around the game. So if he gets some game time today, I think he'll acquit himself quite well, and we'll see how he goes.
So who are the Cats playing and where and when?
Richmond today at noon. It is open to the public. Members can get in free if you want to go down and have a look for 6 quarters. Otherwise, I think it is on KO, so you can sit at home if you have a subscription to that. But they'll be at noon, and then the AFLW follows that at 5 o'clock. So I think there'll be some Cat stuff as quickly getting out the back of Cardinia Park and getting on the highway to Punt Road.
So Cardinia Park is the venue for that?
Yes, GMHBA, yeah.
Yeah, and no doubt tomorrow morning, whenever, Monday, the Geelong Advertiser will have every last second of detail in it, no doubt at all.
Yeah, we'll do as much detail as we possibly can.
I would have thought so. You going along?
No, I'll be sitting this one out. Saturday's my only day off for the next 13 days or so.
And we've done this to you.
Have as much time on the couch as I can.
All right, we better let you go. And enjoy the rest of your Saturday morning. Geelong Advertiser's own Josh Barnes. Thanks for joining us on Two Blokes Chatting Radio Show. We'll chat next week.
Thanks, folks.
There he is, Josh Barnes, even doing the correct thing and calling us folks, which I thought was a nice touch. It is coming up to 4 minutes to 10 o'clock, which means we've only got 4 minutes left. Sienna, thank you for dropping in to be part of the program today.
No, thank you very much for having me.
And we will look forward to making sure that people can go to your new website very soon, siennamannix.com.au. Sienna is starting out her career as a journalist and a broadcaster, and we're very happy to support her. She's got a new website. It's not quite there yet, but it will be in the next few days, hopefully, siennamannix.com.au.